Yusaku Fujiki, the one and only Playmaker. This underground corporate vigilante stood up against greed, corruption, and the monsters who ruined his childhood, dueling his way to the top as he became the hero to the people of VRAINS. Nearly 5 years have passed since the end of Yu-Gi-Oh! VRAINS, but the game continues to evolve and new cards continue to be released. So today, we're going to take a look at a more modern deck profile for Playmaker, exploring some of the cards he may have started using if he were still dueling today. Now in his day, Playmaker was known for using a Cyberse-oriented Link deck, with secondary support for Fusion, Synchro, and Xyz monsters. So to kick things off, let's look at the various Cyberse monsters in his arsenal like Cyberse White Hat, Cyberse Wizard, Cyberse Gadget, Cyberse Converter, and Cyberse Synchron. Cyberse White Hat can be special summoned if you control 2 monsters of the same type, and if it's used as a Link summon material, all monsters on your opponent's field lose 1,000 attack points. Cyberse Wizard can change an enemy monster from attack to defense position, allowing Cyberse monsters to inflict piercing damage against it. The only drawback is that the monster you switch to defense becomes the only valid attack target for the rest of the turn, meaning that you can't attack again after it's been destroyed. Cyberse Gadget lets you special summon a level 1 or 2 monster from the grave when it's normal summoned, but that monster's effects are negated. You can also summon a level 2 Gadget token when Cyberse Gadget is sent to the grave from the field. Cyberse Converter can be special summoned if you only control Cyberse-type monsters, but if it's normal summoned, you can make another face-up monster you control become a Cyberse monster until the end of the turn. And Cyberse Synchron is a tuner monster who can double a monster on your field's original level until the end of each turn. This card can also be banished from the grave to protect a monster in your extra monster zone from being destroyed once. We've also got 2 Cyberse Ritual monsters that we're going to include, with those being Cyberse Magician and Cyberse Sage. Both are ritual summoned with the Cynet Ritual. Cyberse Magician cuts any damage you take while it's on the field in half, and your opponent can't attack or affect target any monster but this one if you control a Link monster at the same time. It gains 1,000 attack points when battling Link monsters, and if this card is destroyed by an enemy's card effect, you can add a Cyberse monster from the deck to your hand. Cyberse Sage lets you conduct a fusion summoning by banishing materials from your field or your graveyard, so long as at least one of those materials is a Cyberse monster. And if Cyberse Sage is used as a synchro material, you can add a Cyberse monster or ritual in your grave back to your hand. We're also going to give Playmaker 3 copies of Parallel Xyz, a monster that can be special summoned from the hand when you perform a Link summoning, and whose second effect lets you summon a second copy of itself from the deck when it arrives on the field. Although, any copy that's summoned by either of its own effects has its attack, defense, and level cut in half. Now, given that Playmaker specializes in code monsters as the aces in his extra deck, we do have some code monsters to discuss in the main deck, such as Microcoder, Code Exporter, Code Radiator, and Code Generator. All of these monsters share a common effect that lets you use them as Link materials while they're still in the hand if you are summoning a Code Talker monster, so long as you are also using a Cyberse monster on your field as another Link material. But all of them can also use one of 2 secondary effects as well, depending on whether they were used for a Link summoning from the hand or from the field. When you Link summon Microcoder from the hand, you can add a Cynet spell or trap card from the deck to the hand, but if you use it as a Link material from the field, you can choose a level 4 Cyberse monster instead. When you use Code Exporter as a Link material from the hand, you can add a low-level Cyberse monster in your grave to your hand, but if you use it as a Link material from the field, you can special summon it without its effects instead. When you use Code Radiator as a Link material from the hand, you can reduce an enemy monster's attack to 0 and negate its effects, but if it's used as a Link material from the field, you can do this to 2 monsters instead. And when you use Code Generator as a Link material from the hand, you can send a Cyberse monster with 1,200 or fewer attack points from the deck to the grave, but if it's used as a Link material from the field, you can add it to your hand instead. So in all of these cases, you can Link summon from the hand, but you get a better effect if you do it from the field. Anyways, Yusaku's other main archetype is the Firewall archetype, so we're going to give him Firewall Phantom, Firewall Defensor, and Firewall Guardian. Firewall Phantom lets you add a Cynet spell or trap from the deck to the hand if it's used as a Link material for a Cyberse monster, and if you discard 1 card. You can also banish this card from the grave to shuffle 1 Cyberse monster from your grave back into your deck. Firewall Defensor lets you summon another Firewall monster from your deck if it's used as a Link summon material, but you can't special summon any non-Cyberse monsters the turn that you activate this effect. This card can be banished from the grave to protect a Firewall monster you control from destruction by card effect. And Firewall Guardian can summon itself back to the field if it's used to Link summon a Cyberse monster. If your Link monster battles an enemy Link monster, you can banish this card from your grave to negate the attack and reduce the enemy monster's attack points to 0. However, it will be immune to other card effects except for its own. Clock Wyvern can ditch half of its attack and defense points when it's summoned to summon a level 1 clock token. Lady Debug can add a level 3 or lower Cyberse monster from the deck to the hand when it's summoned. Balancer Lord lets you pay 1,000 life points to summon a Cyberse monster in addition to your regular normal summon. If this card is banished, you can summon a level 4 or lower monster from your hand. Widget Kid lets you special summon a Cyberse monster in defense mode when it's summoned. Flame Buffalo lets you draw 2 cards when it leaves the field if you discard a Cyberse monster. 4-Mud Skipper lets you reveal a Link monster from the extra deck and then takes on that monster's name, type, and attribute if it's used as a Link material. It also lets you add a level 5 or higher Cyberse monster from the deck to your hand if it's used as a Link material. And Backup Secretary can be special summoned from the hand if you already control another Cyberse monster. And that does it for our monster cards. Moving along to spells, we have the likes of Cynet Fusion, Cynet Ritual, Cynet Mining, Cynet Rollback, Cynet Optimization, Cynet Codec, and Cynet Storm. Cynet Fusion is Playmaker's take on the Polymerization card, only allowing him to summon a Cyberse Fusion monster, but allowing him to use materials in his hand or on his field, in addition to 1 Cyberse Link monster that he can banish from his grave. Cynet Ritual is used to ritual summon Cyberse monsters. It can also be banished from the grave along with a ritual monster to summon 2 level 4 Cynet tokens. Cynet Mining lets you send 1 card from the grave to add a low-level Cyberse monster from the deck to the hand. Cynet Rollback lets you summon a banished Cyberse monster. This card can also be banished from the grave to add 2 banished Cyberse monsters to your hand if you have 2,000 life points or less. Cynet Optimization is a continuous spell that prevents the enemy from activating card effects when a Code Talker monster you control battles. It also allows you to summon a Cyberse monster each turn in addition to your usual normal summon, but if you do, you can only special summon Cyberse monsters from the extra deck for the rest of that turn. Cynet Codec is a continuous spell which lets you add a Cyberse monster to your hand when you summon a Code Talker monster from the extra deck, though the new monster needs to be the same attribute as that Code Talker. Similar to Optimization, you can only pull Cyberse monsters from the extra deck for the rest of that turn. And Cynet Storm is a field spell that boosts all monsters who are linked with another monster by an extra 500 attack and defense points. Also, Link monster summonings can't be negated. Also, if you take 2,000 or more points of damage, you can shuffle your extra deck, look at the top card, and then special summon it if it's a Cyberse Link monster. Then we have 2 non-Cynet spells, Link Bound and Link into the VRAINS. Link Bound lets you target a Link monster on your field or in your graveyard and return it to the extra deck in order to draw cards equivalent to its Link rating. But you have to place the same number of cards at the bottom of your deck. Link into the VRAINS lets you special summon a monster in your hand without its effects and then immediately perform a Link summoning using that monster you just summoned. The Link summoning can't be negated, and your opponent can't activate card or effects in response to it. If a Link monster you control is destroyed, this card can be banished from your graveyard to add a monster of the same type from your grave to your hand. Moving on to trap cards, we have the likes of Cynet Circuit and Cynet Conflict. Circuit allows you to target a Firewall Link monster that you control, and then special summon as many monsters as you like from the grave to any of the zones that Firewall monster points to. Which does mean that you can give your opponent a monster from your grave if that'll help you out for some reason. If you have 2,000 or fewer life points, you can also banish this card from your grave to add a Firewall Link monster in your grave to your extra deck, and then special summon it if you want to. Cynet Conflict lets you negate a spell, trap, or monster effect when you control a Code Talker monster. The negated card is banished, and your opponent can't reactivate or use other copies of that card for the rest of the turn. We also have Code Hack, Limit Code, and Recoded Alive. Code Hack is a continuous trap that protects Cyberse Link monsters on your field from being destroyed by card effects. It can also reduce an enemy monster's attack points to 0 once per turn, but no damage calculation is applied if it battles, and neither monster is destroyed by that battle. If you declare an attack with one of your Code Talker monsters, this card can be banished from the grave to give that Code Talker 700 attack points. Limit Code generates a counter for each Cyberse Link monster in your grave when it's summoned. Then you can special summon a Code Talker from the extra deck and equip this card to it. The Code Talker is destroyed when this card is destroyed, this card is destroyed when it loses all of its counters, and it loses 1 counter at the end of each of your turns. So you get a free Code Talker summoning, but it's limited to a certain number of turns based on how full your graveyard is. Recoded Alive lets you banish a Link 3 Cyberse monster you control or in your grave to special summon a Code Talker from the extra deck. When this card is in the grave, you can banish it to special summon a banished Code Talker monster if you don't have any monsters in the extra monster zone. Packet Link is a trap that lets you special summon any number of different level 2 or lower monsters from the hand, deck, or grave to any zones that a Link monster points to on your side of the field. But this can only occur during your second main phase. And last, Parallel Port Armor can be equipped to a Link monster you control to protect it from enemy card effects and battle. If this card is in the grave, you can banish it and 2 Link monsters in order to allow another Link monster that you control to make a second attack that turn. And that wraps up our main deck. So we're on to the side deck. We've got Bitron, who's basically a low-level shield with high defense, and he has a big brother, Armored Bitron, who can be tributed to special summon a Cyberse monster from the deck without its effects. You can only special summon Cyberse monsters for the rest of the turn when this effect is activated. You can also special summon this card from the grave if a Link 3 or higher monster you control is destroyed. Then there's Ram Clouder, who lets you tribute a monster to special summon a Cyberse monster in your grave. And there's Draconet, who lets you special summon a level 1 or 2 normal monster from your hand or deck when it's normal summoned. And as usual, we're going to wrap up the side deck early, allocating the remaining slots to an oversized extra deck. And if you choose to run this deck profile yourself, you can decide which units you want to use primarily and which ones you want to include in your side deck. To start, we've got the Backup Secretary upgrade, Backup Supervisor. Supervisor is a Link 2 monster that can be used to special summon a Cyberse monster from the hand if Backup Secretary was used to summon it, and if it points to a monster that battled this turn. If this card is destroyed by battle, or it's sent to the grave from the field by card effect, you can special summon Backup Secretary from the hand, deck, or grave. Then we've got the Cyberse Link monsters, Cyberse Enchanter and Cyberse Witch. Cyberse Enchanter is a Link 2 monster that's an upgraded form of Cyberse Wizard. If you used Cyberse Wizard as one of its materials, you can change an enemy monster's battle position and negate its effects until the end of the turn. Unrelated to whether or not you use Cyberse Wizard to summon it, if it's destroyed by battle or sent to the grave from the hand or field by an enemy card effect, you can special summon Cyberse Wizard from your hand, deck, or graveyard. Cyberse Witch is also a Link 2 monster. Her effect lets you banish a spell from your grave in order to add a Cyberse Ritual monster and the Signet Ritual spell card from your deck to your hand if a monster is special summoned to one of her Link zones. If you activate this effect, you can target a level 4 or lower Cyberse monster in your grave and special summon it. Similarly, we have the Splash Mage, another Link 2 monster who allows you to target a Cyberse monster in your grave and special summon it in defense mode without its effects once per turn, and you also can't special summon anything but Cyberse monsters for the rest of the turn that this effect is activated. Next up, we have some representation for the other summoning methods with Cyberse D-Save Worm, Cyberse Integrator, and Cyberse Reminder. D-Save Worm is a fusion monster that combines a Cyberse Ritual, Fusion, Synchro, Xyz, or Link monster with another Cyberse monster. This monster can special summon another Cyberse monster from the hand and then match its level. This card can be banished from the field or grave to negate the activation of a card effect if you control a Link 4 or higher Cyberse monster on your side of the field. Integrator is a level 3 Synchro monster that can special summon a Cyberse tuner from the hand or grave in defense position, and you can draw a card when it's sent to the grave. And Reminder is a rank 3 Xyz monster that can detach a material to add a Signet spell or trap from the grave to the hand. If it's destroyed, you can special summon 2 different level 4 Cyberse monsters from your deck without their effects. And to round out the Cyberse cards, we have Cyberse Clock Dragon and Cyberse Quantum Dragon. Clock Dragon is summoned by fusing Clock Wyvern with a Link monster. When it's fusion summoned, you can send 1 card from the top of your deck to the grave for each Link level of the monsters used to summon it. And, if you do, this card gains 1,000 attack points for each card sent to the grave until the end of the turn. Sadly, this monster's the only one on your field who gets to attack in the turn that this happens. If you control a Link monster, your opponent cannot target other monsters you control for attacks or card effects. If this card is sent to the grave by an enemy card effect, you can add a spell from the deck to your hand. Quantum Dragon is a level 7 Synchro monster who also becomes your opponent's only attack or effect target if you control a Link monster while it's on the field. So if you get both of these dragons and a Link monster on the field at the same time, you essentially lock your opponent out of attacking or using targeting effects. If this card battles an enemy monster, you can return that monster to the hand, and this card can make a second attack. And finally, we come to the Talkers, the monsters who were Playmaker's signature throughout VRAINS as he unlocked new one after new one with his Storm Access ability. To start, we have Code Talker and Code Talker Inverted. Code Talker is a Link 2 monster that gains 500 points for every card it points to, and it can't be destroyed by battle or enemy card effects while it's pointing to another monster. Code Talker Inverted, on the other hand, is another Link 2 monster that can special summon a Cyberse monster from the hand into a zone that it points to once per turn. Next up, we have the monster who was arguably Playmaker's ace in the earliest parts of VRAINS, Decode Talker. This was the first of his Talker monsters, obtained during his first duel with the Knights of Hanoi when he discovered his Storm Access ability. It's a Link 3 monster that gains 500 points for each card that it points to. You can also tribute a card that this monster points to negate and destroy a card that your opponent activates that targets one of your cards. However, there are 2 upgrades for the Decode Talker, with those being Decode Talker Extended and Decode Talker Heat Soul. They both share the rest of their family's effect that they gain 500 attack points for each monster that they link point to. Extended is another Link 3 monster, and its name is Decode Talker when it's on the field. If a monster that this card points to is sent to the grave, this card can make a second attack. And Heat Soul appears to be a combination of Decode Talker and Soul Burner's Salaman Great Heat Leo. It lets you pay 1,000 life points to draw a card, and then, if you have 2,000 or fewer life points, you can banish this card from the field to special summon a Link 3 or lower Cyberse monster from your extra deck. The Decode Talker family does have a piece of support in the form of Link Decoder, which is a Link 1 monster. If it's used to link summon a Cyberse monster with 2,300 or more attack points, Link Decoder can immediately be summoned back to the field, but it's banished the next time it leaves. And that brings us to the rest of the Talkers, with those being Encode Talker, Xcode Talker, Transcode Talker, Access Code Talker, Protect Code Talker, Power Code Talker, and Shooting Code Talker. Encode Talker can protect a monster it points to from being destroyed by battle and prevent battle damage once per turn. It also gains the attack points of any enemy monster that attacked your protected monster until the end of the turn. Xcode Talker can target one unused main monster zone on the field for each extra monster zone that's occupied and prevent those unused zones from being used while this card remains on the field. It also boosts the attack of any monster that it points to and protects them from being destroyed by card effects. Just pay attention to the fact that it does point to one enemy monster zone, so this effect can be used against you. Transcode Talker gives itself and monsters that it's co-linked with 500 extra attack points and protects them from enemy targeting card effects. You can special summon a Link 3 or lower Cyberse monster in your grave and summon it to a zone that this card points to, possibly triggering its co-link effect right there. Access Code Talker gains 1,000 attack points per link rating of one link monster that was used to link summon it. You can banish a link monster from your field or grave to destroy one enemy card. Protect Code Talker protects a Link 4 or higher monster that you control from enemy targeting effects and battle. You can also banish Link monsters from the grave with a combined Link rating of 3 to special summon this card from the grave if, and only if, you already control a Firewall Link monster. Power Code Talker can target a face-up monster on the field and negate its effects for the rest of the turn. It can also tribute one monster that it points to in order to double its own attack points during battle once per turn. Shooting Code Talker, who has a stupid name by the way, can activate its effect at the start of the battle phase. It can make an extra attack for each card that it points to, but if it attacks your opponent's only monster on the field, it loses 400 attack points for that battle only. You can also draw a card for each monster that this card destroyed that turn. So basically, if your enemy has 2 monsters and this card points to 2 monsters, you get 3 attacks. The first one against your opponent's first monster would go through normally. Your second one against your opponent's only remaining monster would deduct 400 points from this card's attack, but then your third attack directly against your opponent would deal full damage. And finally, we have the Firewall Dragons. Firewall Dragon was supposed to be Playmaker's signature monster, but it ended up being so broken in the real-world game that the show downplayed it right after it was introduced, and it wasn't really used too much after that. It's a Link 4 monster that can target monsters on the field or grave up to the number of cards it's co-linked with, and return them to the hand. If a monster that it points to is sent to the grave, you can special summon a Cyberse monster from your hand. Next we have Firewall Exceed Dragon, the only Exceeds Firewall Dragon card. It can be summoned using 2 or more level 4 monsters. It gains 500 attack points times the total link rating of the monsters that it's linked to, and you can detach 2 materials from this card to target a Link 4 Cyberse monster in your grave and special summon it to the field so that it points to this card. Meaning this monster can essentially special summon a co-link in order to give itself 2,000 extra attack points. Sadly, you can't direct attack or special summon other monsters for the rest of the turn. Then we have Firewall Dragon Dark Fluid, Neo Tempest Terahertz. It's a Link 5 monster that negates any monster effects activated by your opponent during the battle phase. It also has a quick effect that lets you send one Cyberse monster from your deck or your extra deck to the grave, and if you do, this card gains that monster's attribute and 2,500 attack points. And in case that wasn't enough, this monster can attack once for each attribute that it's acquired. So each turn you can give this monster the ability to attack one more time and an extra 2,500 attack points. And the biggest, baddest Firewall Dragon Link monster is Firewall Dragon Singularity. This is a Link 6 monster that can target one enemy card on the field or in the grave for each type of monster you control or in your grave, and return those enemy cards to the hand. It then gains 500 attack points for every card that it returned. The eligible types to trigger this effect are Ritual monsters, Fusion monsters, Synchro monsters, and Xyz monsters. So it can return a total of 4 cards and gain 2,000 attack points. If a card this monster points to is sent to the grave, you can then special summon a Cyberse monster from your grave. And that does it for this Playmaker modern deck profile. Probably the least evolved of all of the protagonists since his show ended not that long ago, but still a fun exercise to see how many cards that they've added to his lineup. Only honorable mention I have for this one is the original Firewall Dragon Dark Fluid. Wanted to include it, but it was just redundant with Neo Tempest Terahertz in the lineup. But what do you think of this profile? Are these the cards you think Playmaker would use today, or are there some other cards I should have included instead? Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments, and if you haven't already, hit the subscribe bell thing if you want to see more modern deck profiles in the future. A huge shout out to Wham Bam Duel for helping me create this profile. You can find a link to his channel and a video that he did explaining how to use this deck most effectively down below in the description. You can also find this deck profile available on YGO Pro if you want to use it for yourself. There's not going to be a new deck profile video next week, but there is going to be a theory video instead. I've got some work to go do before that video drops, so again, hit the subscribe bell and I will catch you next time. Bye!